Okay, welcome everyone. So this is a new little session to liven up this lunchtime because it's a little bit drab and dreary outside, and we've definitely lost the sunshine, but hopefully we can bring and liven up this lunch as we talk about our post-pandemic human connections and how, with everything that is going on, our behaviour is changing at probably the fastest rate we've ever seen. And that does challenge us as marketeers, as business owners, as human beings. And what we're going to be chatting about today is just a real open and honest discussion around what we feel as human beings, what we're seeing, what's happening in our lives, what's happening from the data and what the data is telling us. And I'm super excited to be joined back with Elle from Druid London, Cheryl from Website in a Day, and Stacey from Brand Lective. And I just want to open it up actually because we've all seen a massive change in our behaviour as consumers, as people, as business owners. And I've noticed a lot in impulse buying, especially Instagram impulse buying. It's one of the things I've seen a massive rise in. And yeah, I just want to open it up to you guys to have a chat about what you guys have seen in terms of those changes. Sorry, I should say, maybe Elle, do you want to have a start there?
That's interesting. Can I just clarify? I mean, I'm a terrible impulse buyer. But I always buy the quite small value items. When it's a larger value item, which I'd call anything over £200, I take ages deciding. What about you? What's an impulse buy for you? Sorry, putting the question back at you.
Yeah, so I did an Instagram impulse buy from The Beauty Chef, which was a new collagen builder and glow thing to help with digestion health. So I think since being at home, I've really had an impact. I've really been focusing on my own health and starting with like a healthy gut and healthy digestion. So that was a big impulse buy.
Thanks for sharing that. So
honest.
I mean, I think the health and beauty purchases are probably booming, aren't they? Every client I know that sells anything to do with better health is having a great revenue stream at the moment. I don't want to go into the statistics just yet because I'm going to save a little up my sleeve here, but it's been interesting looking at the different generations and how they do react with social. And you're spot on, you're a millennial and you are purchasing mainly through Instagram, and that's a very normal millennial habit. But yeah, we'll come back to that. I mean, I'm desperate to hear what Cheryl's purchases have been. Gin.
maybe one or two bottles. I've actually purchased a necklace, right? And that was through Instagram. I just looked at it. I thought, you know what? I deserve to treat myself, and I purchased that. That was only last week. I purchased a little top, and again, it was puff sleeves. That's why I liked your top, Charlotte. What else have I purchased? I've got trainers because my trainers that I bought at the beginning of lockdown are literally falling apart. Mm. So yeah, and it's all been through Instagram, and then I did a little bit of research as to what the best trainers are for flat feet, and it's Skechers. So I'm going to be super cool in my Skechers.
Nice. It's really good. I don't think I've done too much. I haven't done too much impulse purchasing. I don't think. Pajamas. I've bought quite a few pajama sets. Is that impulsive? I guess that's a reflection of being in lockdown and wanting to be more comfortable. I've, the last couple of years have made a huge shift just in my purchase decisions towards more sustainable brands. So I'm liking all the organic cotton from businesses like Thoughts and other sustainable brands. And I've obviously completely targeted by this sorts of advertisements because as soon as you're expressing, as we know as marketers, any interest in that sort of industry or product offering, that I'm finding myself absolutely bombarded. But I've actually been really pleased with that. I've enjoyed discovering all of the new sustainably sourced brands, and I think I've been more willing to spend the additional funds on them because I'm doing less of the impulse purchases that I probably would do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not, traveling to my office and grabbing breakfast on my way in and purchasing, running out for lunch and getting a Deliveroo for dinner because I've gotten home too late. Like, all of that kind of stuff isn't happening for me. So it's opening up more opportunities for me to be more thoughtful about my purchasing, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we think like everyone is on so that we've all saved a lot of money, which has been a benefit. And then some people have reinvested that in things they wanted to do or paid off credit cards, or they're using that time to refocus on money and finances as a whole. And I think I've seen such a big change in, like what you were saying, Stacey, about the way people buy in terms of that value and sustainable led. But a lot more research and search, which is interesting because as much as you're depending on your audience, your social channels and your quick one-click buy shops need to be available for products. Your search has to be really on top form right now, because people are researching so much further into their buying. What else have you guys noticed in terms of the changes in people behavior?
I think I'm just on what you've said there, Charlotte, I can totally resonate with a few clients of ours where we are seeing a very shift, like an upwards trend in traffic volume, and a lot of it organic. So a lot of it coming through search engines, just as you've mentioned. And it has been a challenge, I think, as marketers to be able to attribute exactly why that shift is happening. There's a lot of guesswork around, yes, people wanting to be more informed, that the sales pipeline has slowed down a little bit, and that people are doing more research and more education before they decide how they're making purchases. But across the board, for every client, we are seeing an uplift in traffic. So I think that is a direct reflection on research.
Yeah, I think the digital increase has been massive. I'm going to dive in there. I'm going to dive in there and tell you about some generational behaviours, because I think it's fascinating. Purely selfishly, the reason that I think it's fascinating is that I am a Generation X, you are Y. And my son, who is 16, is a Generation Z. And my parents are baby boomers. So we cover, all of the generations. But speaking about my parents, I've really noticed that they are all about customer service and reviews. But the biggest kind of market or sector that's received this biggest growth through the pandemic has been the meal deliveries. So foods like HelloFresh and the Soul Mindful Chef and smoothie brands as well. And I don't see that decreasing after lockdown. I don't see, certainly with the baby boomer generation, I don't feel like they're going to necessarily go back to shops or forecourts or that type of thing. That's gonna be a serious incline. Generation Z, to be completely biased, because my son is amazing, and we're constantly watching really trash telly, like I don't know, LA Housewives, and he's like, Mama, I hate the fake look, like the fake tan and the fake hair extensions and the fake collagen and stuff. And having delved a little deeper into those, into that generation, and use stuff like Mackenzie, who are always really good about their thought leadership papers, it was seen that he's not alone in that. So in his generation, which is 2 to 17-year-olds, which is coming up fast, they have apparently a 70% impact on what their parents buy. Well, their parents are the millennials or the Generation X that are actually really important as Generation Y. And they never touch a laptop ever. They are all mobile. So doing stuff through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat is absolutely vital way of communicating with them. But they are, so 77%, which is huge, all about realness and authenticity and trust. And I love that. And in my generation, a Generation Xers, You know, we like to do our email, but you know what our path to purchase is? I'm really ashamed about this, but I really resonates with me. I'm going to just say it out loud, maybe have some therapy later, is a good old HTML email.
Mm.
We are all about that. Whereas you guys, you millennials, you know, you've already said it, Instagram, it hits you up, and as long as you feel it's authentic and sustainable. What I would ask, I've got a question. I'm not done with the facts and statistics. But I don't want it to be an L show about statistics. But what I would ask is, when, especially you, Stacey, when you're looking at these sustainable brands, do you feel like they've been sustainable on their entire since found, or have they changed their messaging to suit the pandemic? And it's not a criticism; it'd just be interesting.
No, I think it's a really good point. I think because we in my agency do a lot of work with sustainable brands, and because we're always looking at, you know, as you know from some of the work that we've done, we're aligned with the United Nations SDGs, and I've done a lot of understanding of the entire pipeline, right? Like some of you may have seen that we run a 7-day plastic-free challenge every month across our socials, and you know, we're really encouraging people to take part in things like that. Then it puts pressure on us to understand the entire journey, or the product journey really, for a lot of different businesses. And I think I personally have not come across the brands where I think that they're just greenwashing and they're trying to embrace this shift towards sustainable, being more sustainable and taking care of our planet, and you know, all that kind of thing. I personally haven't seen that. I'm sure it exists. I would suspect that it is, you know, I think price is always determined, right? So you can kind of see in terms of when you've got sustainable products, generally are not cheap. They're not those sort of, you know, under £10 sort of purchases. They really are not. So I suspect that the types of targeting that those brands are doing are probably at a possibly a demographic that doesn't do the research, and possibly at people that are not as informed. And I think, so I guess to answer your question, I haven't really seen that. I think for me, I'm always looking at the full journey. I do the research, right? I'm targeted by a brand. I think, oh, their mission sounds fantastic. I am on their website and I'm reading through, you know, how their whole journey looks, the way that they source products, and understanding the whole journey. So I mentioned the plastic thing there, you know, not all plastic is bad. Single-use plastic is bad, you know, but I think it's something like the average cotton tote, and we're all sick of having the cotton totes given to us in stores when we're purchasing now. The reality is, depending on how that has been produced, you will often have to use that up to 150 times before it is more sustainable than a plastic bag. And it is important to understand that life cycle of that product and how it's going to be used before it becomes something that is worth investing in. So I'm big on doing the research. I will dig in, not only on their websites, but also just the Google searches and going back and doing the review sites. There are many sustainable bloggers out there that will uncover and will, you know, whistleblow on a brand that is not doing things very authentically. So I don't think it's difficult anymore to figure out who's doing it wrong and who's doing it right, if you're willing to take even just 5 to 10 minutes to understand a brand.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I don't know.
it's bang on, really. And you know, that people are much more likely to support your cause if you support other causes as well, such as B Corporation or you know, through the pandemic, NHS. Much more likely. So yeah, that kind of, it's very interesting. Sorry.
That's all right. I think it's a really interesting point that we touched on, that it's been growing, the sustainability element and the value-based businesses, value-based brands, ethical brands is something that has been gradually growing. And now through COVID, with the additional time and everyone just taking a little bit more time to think about the world and planet that they live in, it has catapulted it even further. So brands were already doing it and doing it well. It'd be good to discuss them. I'm thinking also for brands that maybe have been doing some things but haven't communicated about it, or have started that. How do they then now start to communicate that authentically, not so that they are just jumping on the bandwagon, but yeah, start to bring that to their customers' attention without it being just an add-on.
I think it's fine for them to jump on the bandwagon, really. I mean, if they're actually starting to look at their processes and seeing how they can be more, green, then great. That's a beneficial, they can just put their hands up and go, we weren't before, but we've done some research and we've educated ourselves. And actually this is what we feel that's important to us. And our new values are X, Y, Z. So I think it's fine if they jump on the bandwagon if they weren't doing it before, as long as they're authentic with it and just put their hands up and go, hey, we weren't before, but look what we've done. Look what we're doing now. We're doing this, 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 and this, and this. And the reason why we're doing X, Y, Z is because we feel that we need to provide for.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think it's okay. I think if it's done with I think it's about intention, I suppose. If it's done with the intent of as a marketing tactic, then I think, that can feel a little bit, not as trustworthy perhaps as a business that's really looking to change the way they're doing business. But I think if it's coming from a place where we're like, yeah, we know actually that we haven't done things well in the past, and we genuinely want to change, then I agree with you, Cheryl. I think it's a good thing. Well, the question, Charlotte, were you asking about, I guess maybe you can jump in on this too, but it's like, if the question is where's the right point in the pipeline to talk about this? And I think that's a really difficult discussion for a lot of brands, because I think a lot of brands are nervous about putting it too far up in the front of the journey, because they don't want to be seen as greenwashing or as a brand that's just using it as, let's dangle the carrot of the sustainable elements and what we're doing and aren't we amazing. I think some brands are nervous about that, putting it too far up front, and it looks like a tactic. But equally, if that is something that is important to consumers, so for me, it is something that is important. If I hadn't seen that in that 15-second ad that I saw on Instagram, perhaps I wouldn't have gone to look at them and explored what happens next. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think, again, it just comes from, where does it stem from? Is this a genuine value of the business? Is this something that we are investing in and continuing to develop and evolve, and it's the whole substance of our brand, or is it a marketing tactic? And I think this is a challenge that we've often had even in my agency, because we've done, just in the last 2.5 years, we've introduced, a lot of the giving impacts and things that we do. And I still, even myself, are uncomfortable talking about it at the beginning. It's not really obvious on our website. I'm not using it in our advertising to say, come and work with us, because when you do, this is what happens. I use it as a bit of a surprise and delight element to reconfirm a good purchase decision for my clients. So I don't really talk about it in the sales process. Mm-hmm. When you choose to become a client, then I say, hey, because you're a client of ours, this is what you've enabled us as an agency to do. We've given, 1 day's worth of human rights workers' wages and 2 days worth of business training to women in East Africa. And then for every 30-day contract, you achieve this, 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 and this. But for me, it doesn't happen up front. So it's you've made the decision now, and I'm reconfirming to you why that was probably a good decision, but I don't dangle it up front. And I think that does come from a place of concern that people will interpret it wrong.
That's really interesting, because I actually didn't know you did it until I heard you speak. And then at the end, you were like, because I've had X amount of attendees, I'm going to give or plant a tree for everyone that turned up today. And I was just like, wow. So I think it's a nice little stamp that you do at the end. Oh, by the way, we also do this. It's also because it comes from a good place. It's genuine. It's, so the fact that you choose not to advertise it up front, I don't know, there's probably some arguments for and against it.
Oh, I agree. I think it's a complicated thing, and I think a lot of brands do struggle with it. I don't know. So Charlotte, do you have something to add to that? Because you work with some brands that do something similar, don't you?
Yeah, I think you're right. It comes down to the core values of the company, and if it is something that is in the foundation of the company, it was always that way. It really is about that. Then it should be in everything. if it is, like you're saying, it's developed and you've decided as a brand, as your business, that it's something that is a delight that they get to, then they're choosing to work with you on merit because you guys are awesome, but actually they get this additional benefit on the back end. And I think as long as you have that clarity, and that does have to come from the top, but there needs to be a very clear reasoning as to why and when, and then it will just naturally flow. So we have a couple of brands that we work with that it is purely in the foundations. It's actually why they started, because they have in different industries that they were annoyed about the way things were done, and they literally wanted to make this type of industry more sustainable. So their core purpose for starting was purely that. So it makes sense that in everything they do, it leads from that. So it's where it started. And then like here we have other brands where they are doing some fantastic stuff, but they wait until so further down or at the point of already engaging with someone that it's a benefit afterwards. And I understand both.
I think it will change. I think we'll see it change because I don't think there's a, as you say, a right or a wrong way. I also think that we're moving towards this being an expectation from consumers. And I don't, well, right now it's a USP potentially for businesses or even for agencies like us. I think in time, and I think we're moving towards it very rapidly, it will be an expectation. So therefore it doesn't become a USP. So I suspect it becomes less at the forefront and just a part of who we are as businesses. So I think it's interesting. I think we'll see it change.
I think if you think back to, and whilst we were talking, I was trying to running through my head as to where my clients or even us as an agency talk about what we do for sustainability and purpose. And I wonder if we're certainly with service providers like ourselves, it does become, it's not even an added value, but back in a day, people would have their CSR, their corporate social responsibilities, sort of hidden on their website, not hidden from view, but just because it wasn't front and center of their messaging or their marketing. What was front and center of their messaging and marketing is, look what we can deliver. Whereas if you're a consumer brand, if you're an actual product, for me, seeing some really powerful messages about the added value make me buy something. It's a really tricky one though. But it's so great, and I think it's a change that it was so needed, and it's now it is the norm that you need to. It's not about having a CSR list of stuff you do. It's an essential part of everyone's business and responsibility, which is great.
Well, it's coming from Generation Z, like you're talking about, like your son, with that they want that transparency, that trust, that is, it all stems from that. So any brand that doesn't think they have to worry about Gen Z yet, I think they're very quickly going to be mistaken, and I think that's a risk.
And what's interesting is, again, going back to the pandemic, is I wonder whether that generation are even more engaged at this moment in time because of the lack of schooling. So, homeschooling, let's not even go there because that's a different webinar altogether. But actually it has allowed them to, really the only thing they've had left to do during a lockdown is look at their mobile phones and really look into, what they feel good about and what they don't feel good about, and openly talk about it. They don't see gender, they don't see color. Like it is an amazing generation, and they're going to change the world. But we just have to leave them a world that they want to inherit. I think we have a responsibility to do that. Well, that was a bit deep, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did get a bit deep there. No, it's good. I think as a brand, like any brand, we have to understand our demographics, don't we? Like, I don't know if you guys have something to share on this with regards to clients that you work with, but it's understanding your demographics. So, are your clients or is your brand speaking to that sort of aging population? Or at the beginning where we all go through a cycle, right? The learners, the earners, the consumers, the investors, then we retire. Like there's this whole, we're all going to go through it. And where does your brand fit in that journey for people? And what are their expectations from you? And I think it's quite interesting to be thinking about what is changing about what's happened during this lockdown and how will things change in the future? Because I've heard brands talking about, a lot of businesses will not return to the workplace and we will shift towards remote working. And what does that mean for businesses? For example, you know, I've heard chatter from businesses saying, okay, if we're based in the City of London and we've got these huge office spaces with all this expenses and we now realize we don't really need that. We can be working from home, or we can be co-working. Therefore, remote works. So do we actually even still need London-based people? Could we outsource this to the north? Could we outsource this to Europe or further afield? And then what does that mean for the British economy, the UK economy? And then how does that impact buying decisions and behavior? And, you know, I think there's a much bigger thought piece here that maybe a lot of brands going through what they've just gone through in the last couple of months are not ready to be thinking about that. But I think it's interesting. I don't know. Have you guys seen any of that from any of your clients?
I have, yeah, definitely. And he said, I was like, so you're going to let them go remote now? Like, what's your plan? He's like, well, we were kind of remote anyway, but they're dying to come back to have some community, to actually have that bounce off that we all crave, you know, to bounce off each other in the same space. So he's actually, this is just one particular client, he's actually expanding and buying another section of the building, which is interesting. But then I've had other clients that have completely shut down their whole offices, and they're going to go, you know, the remote working route, and where they'll have a sort of what was that? What's that office called? WeWork sort of environment instead, so they can come and go as they please. They've got the breakout areas, they've got the meeting room if they like. So I think, again, depending on your industry, but definitely going to see more and more remote working going on.
I just wonder, what does that mean for like the big brand, you know, the big brands, but you know, what does that mean for like the Costa and the Pret and the Itsu and the, you know, the M&S and all those sorts of things that rely on our lunchtime purchases? I'm really curious to know what that means for those sorts of businesses. I think it's
We've got Deliveroo.
So
yeah, it'll be delivered.
Well, yeah, could be.
It's an interesting move in the WeWorks. Obviously, the co-working spaces and community working spaces were incredible, already on the rise for the last 1 to 2 years. This, I think it actually could go two ways. You're right. The bigger businesses that don't need the fixed offices will go that way, and the smaller companies that were already in the community spaces probably just going to go even more remote. And with further away and connections purely on video and digital, for businesses that were purely bricks and mortar businesses, how does that impact them going online? And I know, Cheryl, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but there's, for businesses that are purely in real life and that have sort of shut down for a while and now trying to go back, what could they be doing to help like transform online? Because this must be a very daunting time for them.
Well, absolutely. I mean, especially, they always say, oh, I'm not very techie, or if they, you know, they don't know where to start and they haven't got that, they haven't got someone to therefore say, you know, what should we be doing? But there are so many grants out there. Again, I don't know if the local ones from your councils, but you can have a little Google. I've written down a few of, there are a total of 226 small business grants available, okay, which is massive. And I'll happily send out the link so that we've got everything. So a few, we've got the apprentice grant, where you can get an apprentice in. We've got the gigabit broadband voucher scheme, which small businesses can get up to £2,500 in funding. We have the seed enterprise investment schemes. There's so many. Crack It challenges, Eureka, Eurostars. That is if you want to work with more people in and get your business out there in Europe. Horizon 2020 we've got. there are so many, but I'm happy to put the link out on the chat so you can have a look.
These are businesses, Cheryl, that like these grants are given to businesses who are looking to embrace digital and embrace
absolutely digital, online. If you want to get staff, there's so much. I mean, there's 226. So I've done a little bit of research there for you and gathered a list. I'm happy to share that. But there really is. I know that Els also put in for her local council grants.
I have. I'm in the borough of Lambeth, proudly Lambeth, not born. Oh my goodness, that's worrying. Live, work and play in Lambeth, and they have been absolutely fantastic. And they've opened multiple grants throughout this entire pandemic. But yeah, you can apply for a £10,000 grant at the moment if your business has been affected by the pandemic. And when I say affected, they're looking at anything over a 20% decrease in revenue. Well, that's probably everyone, right? I would have thought. So so they've been amazing. And I think I get especially excited about the grants specifically to be invested into the likes of digital. And what was interesting when I was doing my research, and I don't have a list, I feel quite jealous about your list actually, but maybe next time, is in the SARS outbreak in 2003, there was a company called Alibaba, who at the time only had bricks and mortar and had a very business to business approach, very local as well, and a turnover about 0.21 billion. And now, and they were 4 years old at the time. Now their turnover is 6.42 billion. And actually that was in 2011, which is a long time ago, because they completely digitalized their offer. And I just think that's it's a massive opportunity. It can feel quite overwhelming, but that's when you've got, 4 girls on this webinar that can hold your hand and lead you through the process, to ensure that you understand what's happening every step of the way. But yeah, just, some good things can come out of some bad things like SARS and COVID-19.
I was on the phone to the client yesterday and I can't wait to see what businesses come out of this. And I was like, oh, really? She was like, oh, I mean, it's not really something, unless we're having a discussion about it, that you think about, but there's going to be so much amazing things that come out of this, from a positive side of things. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it ties back to what we talked about in the beginning, where you said, Al, the boomers all getting online and suddenly subscribing to the food boxes. Yeah, I think it's like, why this is just, it's a push. I mean, not saying any of us asked for the push, but it is a push towards embracing that and shifting people forward to really embrace technology. And I think as a whole, on the other side of it, hopefully it will be a positive thing. I think, there's so many different things that a lot of people feel they should have been more progressive, right? I'm speaking to a lot of businesses that feel that they should have made these decisions years ago, but are just caught up in the day-to-day of what they do and just have not been quick enough to adapt. It's so, and you may experience this too, where I'm having conversations literally every day where people are saying, I'm just embarrassed that I didn't embrace it, and oh God, I can't, I'm still nervous about it, and I don't know if I could ever be digital. I'm like, oh my God, firstly, don't be embarrassed. Like, if your business has worked amazingly to date, running bricks and mortar, fantastic, but this is the push that you probably needed to make that transition so that you can continue to grow as a business, because the generations that are coming want that. So I think it's great that woman said that to you, Cheryl. It's like, it's exciting. Like there are a lot of things that will happen that should be looked forward to, and it's just pushing us all towards making some of the tough decisions that we maybe should have made sooner.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think what's really interesting here is that we've covered kind of the way people are changing their behaviours and the difference between generations. What I just want to move us on to for the second half is very much around how and why we do that. So when we're thinking about human connections post-pandemic, we can't predict behaviour, although we're starting to see where those trends and where that behaviour is going. what can brands be doing to personalize their communication and be on the right channel to be in the right moment with the people that they need to connect with?
I started laughing there just because I talk about being on the right channel a lot. And I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but speaking to brands, and I'm having a lot of new sales conversations at the moment where brands are coming to me and saying, oh, I hate, I don't want to go down to TikTok, and I don't even really like Instagram. Like I just use LinkedIn, or I just use this. And I just like, no, sorry, but no. Like, you have to understand your customer. You must understand who they are, what they do, what their challenges and their problems are, which channels they use. And whichever channels they use, that is where you need to go. It is not about you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's quite a difficult message.
It's just completely like, and I feel like I'm a record on replay, and I'm just so annoying, but I'm just like, please, it's not about you. It's nothing to do with you. It is to do with, do you want to do sales? If the answer is yes, then sorry, but you need to go to where your customers are. Like, end of story.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was on a podcast about 2 weeks ago, and we discussed TikTok. And when I went to social media world, marketing world in February, everyone rushed to the TikTok sessions, right? I was like, whatever, no, I'm good, right? And then I went to this keynote, and he was like, you're all rushing to the TikTok stuff, guys, but where are your clients? Where are your clients? And it was so funny. I was like, thank goodness I didn't rush to the TikTok stuff, because everyone that I work with is 45 plus. You know, yes, they might have a little look on TikTok, but the chances of them actually joining in, they might join in with their daughters or their sons and have a little laugh and a giggle. I mean, I love looking on TikTok. I can lose hours on there. But it's not where my audience is. I still embrace that, still have a bit of fun with it, but it's purely fun. So I think that's a very strong point that Stacey's made, and makes me chuckle, as you can tell.
I just think it's mental. Like, you just think if you stay on a platform that you like long enough that your customers will come to you. I'm like, you're crazy.
What is a way for brands and like smaller businesses for them to actually find out what platforms their customers are on? And I suppose what we're talking about today is that their customer is changing, and how as brands can we constantly be up to date with, one, who our customer is, or who's our next customer, and where they're actually hanging out.
Who wants to go with this one?
I'm going from a very basic level. Ask them.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really obvious, but a lot of brands do miss that. I think ask them. Ask your customers. Like, what are you enjoying doing? What has changed? Do you find yourself trying new platforms? Like, just ask them. I think if you don't know, or that's not possible for whatever reason, then I think you need to trial new platforms and trial everything, and then look back at your data and understand where is the interaction coming from. But one quick thing on data, actually, because I just was talking to a client earlier this week about this, is numbers don't tell you everything, right? So for example, we can look at different channels where I've got a brand that I work with. It's a consumer brand that they use Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Engagement, if we look at just the numbers, engagement, so what I mean by numbers, is impressions and engagements, is all on Facebook. It's actually having in Facebook groups. It's like the sort of demographic is 45 to 55-year-old women that use this product. It's all happening on Facebook. Instagram engagement levels, not so much. But actually, when we look at click-through and then what's actually happening once we're on the website to purchase, so inquiry to actual transaction, it is Instagram. So the volume of engagement and impressions on Instagram is almost 50% lower than Facebook. But actually that's where the money's at. That's where people are making the purchase decisions that are actually converting to a paying customer. So I think it's so I guess my point is you have to test all the platforms, but you really have to dig in. Don't just look at headline numbers and like, oh, this following is the biggest and this many people engaged. Who purchased? And that is where your attention needs to go. So I don't know if that's too simple, but that's where I would start.
No, it's oh,
Go on now.
I mean, it's the impressions and is vanity, isn't it? Surely it's the conversion is sanity. You know, it's a really interesting one. They say, sorry, I'm just putting my water down. Getting clients to really not think of their own journeys as well is really fascinating. Sorry, Cheryl, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to echo what you said. Really, you know, impressions over conversions. But I mean, in terms of platform and how we can actually take the most of each platform, I would definitely say is video. And video, every time I say it, my clients are like, oh God, every time, oh God, regardless of, if it's just the business owner that needs to be in front of the camera, or the fact that they have to invest in a team of videographers that come in and actually interview you and take the time to actually learn about your business. That's all still something that people are quite reluctant to do. So it might be from a side of cost and time that takes in order for them to invest in the video, or if you're a business owner, the fact that you've got to actually just be in front of camera, so regardless of, if you're a big marketing agency or a business owner, that whenever I say video, it's always, but I'm going to say it again and again and again. It's video, it's video, it's video.
Same. Yeah. And I think not just video, I mean, the thing that puts the fear of God into all of my clients is when I say a live video. And it doesn't matter whether you're live on Instagram or, well, it does. I mean, we'll get, we all know it does matter, but it can be it is a really powerful tool, and it's really important, and the brilliant brands are doing live video brilliantly. So yeah, we've got, but we're all business owners and leaders, so are we doing live videos? Because I'm terrified of them, apart from live webinars, obviously.
I do lots of video, but not so much live. I mean, we're live now, right?
We're live now, but we're not gonna it's a good point.
Well, maybe the next one we'll post it live as well as it being live to our audience. So you can definitely do that. And that challenges us, because it's right. The video element is true. If we think about the amount we are going to be remote, the lack of as business owners and as senior brand execs, we're not out meeting people like we once were. We would all be out a couple of times in a week just meeting people. We're not doing that. So video is the only channel you can do that. If you were a bricks and mortar business and you're transferring to digital, you are not going to have the face-to-face with your customer anymore, and your customer doesn't want it because they're scared. But what they do want is an interaction. So in the same way that you would interact with a customer or a prospect, or however you name them, in real life, you now need to do that on video. And people that don't know your brand, that are just coming in to meet your brand, also need to get to know the brand on video, that will potentially replace or be alongside whatever in real life experiences we start to have in the future. So I think it's a really good point, Cheryl, because transforming onto video is really important. But that isn't easy. And it does take confidence, and I would say some baby steps. So during even your own journeys, how have you done that? I mean, I suppose I started with these, and then started to use the same thing to record video messaging, so that meetings that I would go to, then I'll get a video recording of me. Pitches that we would go to, I'm actually recording you doing the pitch, so it's a bit like so it's like me being there but not, but at least they're getting a bit of an interaction with me like they would have done. So that's kind of how I've started, and I've definitely got more to do. So what have you guys been doing?
So I started on Instagram stories in 2017, and I think Instagram stories came out in 2016, so I watched for a year. Obviously we had Snapchat before that, we had Periscope before that, you know, and I watched, then jumped on board. I thought, well, if I can do one a week, you know, that's fine. So I did one a week, then 2 a week, then before you know it, I was talking to camera. Now, I know that's, you know, well, it's different for everyone. So I had a breakfast this morning, and the fear that came up is actually confidence. Everyone's not confident enough to do it. I completely understand that, and you've got to work with yourself, and you've got to practice, and know, and you have got to get rid of that whole factor of not really caring what other people think, which is really, really, I know that's easier said than done. It's really quite a difficult thing to do. But actually we are here to, you know, to tell a story about our business.
Yeah.
And if we're so worried about what other people think, nothing is ever going to get done. At the beginning of Instagram, what are you doing? I'm talking with the camera. So yeah, baby step.
I get a lot of people push back on it too, and I think the one I find actually solo entrepreneurs or just single business owners are probably more open to it than actually a bigger brand. So I have a couple of clients that are, you know, 100 million pounds in revenue, and they're actually the ones that are more resistant. And I think that is because they worry that there's a lack of professionalism. And then there's probably more risk that they're taking on in terms of what somebody might say, particularly if they're you know, highly regulated or you know, there's a lot of compliance involved. How do you have you guys run into the same thing? Do you find that you have any clients that have those same either concerns, or how do they overcome them?
Yeah, I think Cheryl did sort of say that with the confidence thing. I think when it's individuals, it's confidence, and then when it's brand, it's ego slash. Yeah, I think it's ego and validation actually in bigger brands, because it's difficult. Who's going to do it? And then the higher person won't want to do it, but then they don't want a lower level person doing it, and it shouldn't be. A brand wants to be represented by its brand identity, not a face. So there's that element with video, but you can always create branded video that doesn't revolve around a key person of influence. A smaller business can. I think one thing that we advised are, so smaller brands that have a key person of influence, we advise them to test and practice, but just with us. So don't go straight into a live environment if you want to. So we practice, they send it, we edit, we give notes, they go back. The alternative way that we did it was do it, don't look, trust us to get it out, and get into the flow of it before reviewing it. So that's actually one of the things I did. So rather than reviewing it and pulling it apart, I just said to my team, I trust you, you know what I like, you do it, I'm not going to look. And then once I got past the barriers, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to look now because I don't care. And it's about moving, because I wouldn't record myself in a pitch, I wouldn't record myself in a meeting, I wouldn't record myself giving a keynote. Why would I do that to do a Zoom or to do a video or to do a stories? So that's kind of some of the ways that we go over it.
I have this incredible, I think it's a validation thing as well, isn't it? So no one likes looking at pictures of themselves, or unless they're, you know, strangely vain. I've got a client, Emmy London, who launched, she's called Emmy Scarsfield, and she launched Emmy London back in 2004, so a long time ago. And she was, you know, very reluctant to get in front of camera, very, very reluctant. She's absolutely gorgeous. Her brand is luxury shoes and accessories, so beautiful and hand finished. And we encouraged her, and now we can't get her off. We can't get her off the platform. She's now got, you know, she's got 26,000 followers, which is just under what the actual brand itself is. But she just, from people going, oh, I loved that. That was really interesting. Gosh, your skin is amazing. She was like, oh, okay, no, that's perfect. And now we can't get her off the camera. So I think, you know, take the fear, suck it in, breathe through it, get it out there, and then ask people what they thought, because you know what? I bet the response is positive.
Yeah. I'd like to also add that the further up I mean, if you can get the person in charge to actually do it. I think some people think, oh, if they can get a member of staff to do it, that's good enough. They're never ever going to represent the brand the way that you want it to be represented, and the energy and the enthusiasm is just not going to be there. I've worked with clients and they're like, oh, I'm going to get Tracy to do it in the office, and I'm like, great, good luck with that. And it happens maybe for 1 or 2 days, or they put something together and it's just not there. It needs to come from the top, and I think regardless of how big the company is, but again, you can be creative in the ways that you can put video out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be face to camera. You can invest in some amazing video companies that would do something very creative for you.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. This has definitely livened up my lunchtime. I hope it has everyone else's. But girls, from today, what is your number one key takeaway from what we've been talking about?
Mine's just to go back and really review, we talked at the beginning about the shift in maybe your demographic has changed. So I think if that is the case for a brand, then the one takeaway would be, go out and re-interview your customers and find out, has it changed, and ask them which platforms they're using. I think that is a key starting point to figuring out where to go next.
Yeah, I echo that. I think also, if you don't feel like you have anything sustainable about your brand or your products, dig deep, because I bet there is stuff even in your supply chain, there'll be some amazing things to discover. And like we discussed earlier, whether you have it as your kind of nice to have and a great surprise, or you have it front and center, which I don't think we got to a conclusion on. But I think, there will be something there.
Definitely. And then take a look at the grants. There's so much available, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in tech either, depending on, what your industry is. So take a little look. I've put the link actually in the chat. So there's 226 to sort of look through and see if there's one there that can help your industry and your business.
Yeah, and actually just before we wrap up, there is a question in from Alex actually around how we would be repositioning a B2B brand to the mass market. Guys, if anyone wants to jump in.
Business to business. I mean, I think we have to remember these are people too. Even though you're selling a service to a company or what, people still want to have an authentic voice. Repositioning, that's such a strong term. I don't know if in terms of a strategy that's a necessary thing. It depends whether you're that you're quite I'm not going to make much sense, but you're doing bad things, then you kind of need to talk about your morals and your ethics being repositioned, maybe. I don't know. That wasn't very clear. Sorry. I'm sure that Sharon, Stacey, and yourself have some better.
Well, I didn't actually catch the question. I was too busy opening Cheryl's link. What was the question? I was like, where's the grant? Or something about
repositioning a business to business, right?
Yeah.
So essentially this is going from a B to C to B to B. Yeah. Is that right? Sorry, Charlotte?
I think, the question is around broadcasting and content going out and repositioning for a B2B brand to a mass market approach. And I think actually the starting of Elle's answer is right. We talk about this all the time. Now this is about business to people. And even your brand needs humanizing. So it's really about humanizing the brand and talking to people, regardless. It's just that you have to define who your avatars, who your profiles are, and who were they and who are they becoming. And that's kind of what we've been talking about in terms of that behavior and the channels that they work to. I think in repositioning your content, for me, that very much comes back down to humanizing the brand and thinking about, if you used to be going out doing face-to-face conversations, a lot of keynotes, you were doing a lot of networking, or you would be that key person of influence going out meeting people, how can you translate what you would naturally say to people in video, in email, in social, however that needs to work, and understanding the pain point of the person you're trying to connect with before writing the message would be what I would say.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, if before you did go out and network and you did have that whole face-to-face aspect, like what could you do to, you know, create an event or create a panel, create something where people come to you, so that you can show and, you know, still network in the same way, but you are actually becoming the, you know, the person that's arranging the network, whether it be on Zoom or I don't know.
Yeah, because with Zoom, it doesn't actually have to be a webinar. You can host virtual events in the same level of account. So if you've got a small group of businesses that you want to connect with, you can always invite them to your virtual events.
Yeah.
I was only going to add, the only thing I was going to add to Charlotte's comment was I agree. I think it's less of B2B and B2C. I think people get very caught up in that, and I think we're all people. Yeah. The only piece I would add to that is often the difference between B2C and B2B is there's a pipeline of decision makers, possibly. So although B2C, you might be doing video content that speaks to one person, you need to think about the sequence or the chain in terms of like, who's your first touch point and what content do they need, and then what other content do we need further down the pipeline to speak to when, let's say, the first point of contact is the PA of the founder of a business, and then the second point is the founder of the business. Then you need to think about those two pieces. That for me is the only difference.
Yeah, it's a great point. I hope we've answered that question, Alex. Okay, awesome. We're right on time. So thank you all so much for attending and for joining me. It's been incredible. So many takeaways, and I see everyone eating up the link. So thanks, Cheryl, for sharing that. Hopefully people get some really nice grants to transform your business online. Right, so thanks all everyone. Have a great day and we'll see you soon. Bye.